Please tell me, what was the situation during the Second World War in Moldavia?
In the interwar, what is now Moldova, basically Bessarabia, was a part of Romania, Romanian Kingdom. Bessarabia historically is a part of the Romanian Principality of Moldavia, and it was seized by the Tsarist regime in early 19th century. So after the First World War, it united with Romania, and in 1940, which is the war, we forget sometimes about that. The war started 1 year before. So during the initial part of the war, Bessarabia is occupied by the Red Army as Baltic states, according to the Stalin-Hitler Pact of August 1939. And actually, if you look at the war and Moldova, we had in 6-year period, you have 4 regimes, 2 Romanian ones, one interwar, the king, 39, 40, and then we have the Soviet, we call it the first Soviet occupation, 40, 41, as the Baltics do the same, and then we have 41, 44 Romanian Antonescu regime, which was a line of Germany, and then we have 44, 45 up to the end of communism, we have the Soviet regime. So we have a very complicated situation when both countries, Soviet Union and Romania, pretended the total loyalty of the citizens to their project, to their ideology. And we have repressions, first of all, of the Soviets in 40-41 against the well-to-do peasants and the real or imagined enemies, or those perceived as agents of Romanian government. Basically, it is about the officials in the interwar Romania, members of the political parties, of the democratic but also extreme right, Iron Guard, and so on and so on. So we had a mass deportation in mid-June, just 10 days before the war started, the German-Soviet one. When the Romanians came in the summer of 1941, we have another regime change, which is bringing also repressions, basically against the Jews. We have the Holocaust in Bessarabia and Transnistria. According to the most, let's say, credible data, there were about 350,000, 400,000 Jews killed or starved to death in Transnistria, basically, because they were. And the perpetrators of the Holocaust in Bessarabia and Transnistria are the German SS groups, the Einsatz group there, which was operating in this area, also Ukraine. We have the Romanian army, but also we have perpetrators among the civil population, among the ethnic Romanians, but also other ethnic groups, Ukrainians, sometimes Russians. So here we can not ethnicize the the issue, saying that the Russians were for the Soviet regime and the Romanians were for Romanian or German. So the picture is more complicated, as we acknowledged in the recent years after our archives has been disclosed. And then you have the war, you have in 44 the Red Army coming again, and the same this time looking for, including the Smersh archive we have in Chisinau, looking at the agents and enemies of the Soviet regime, those who fought or collaborated with the Germans, Romanians. So it's a very tragic to resume. It's a tragic period in the history of Moldova, as in the other parts of Europe.
What was the situation like for normal people, for the population, when the Nazis arrived in Moldavia? What were their thoughts?
The Nazis did not came alone. They came with the Romanian army. So in the initial, let's say, weeks, there was a kind of enthusiasm, as it was for another reasons in 1940, when the Red Army came. There was also some kind of enthusiasm, but only in the beginning, because when they started to implement their policies, the people became more kind of reserved. And then actually in the beginning the public opinion was more, let's say, taking sides with the Germans and Romanians. After Stalingrad, basically, we have documents of the Romanian gendarmerie and Romanian army saying that the public opinion shifts enthusiasm to the Red Army. And actually there is an interesting report in 43, Romanian one, saying that what the Bessarabians want actually. And they were saying very plainly, they are not with the Russians, they are not with Romanians, with us. They just they just want the war to end. And so this was the let's say basically the what was happening.
For the most Russians, the Moldovan people were, it was pretty clear that they should fight for the Soviet Union. How did the people in Moldavia, how did this Soviet people come to this opinion? What were the mechanisms in history?
Yeah, there was a whole, historiographical production during the Soviet period. The Soviet historical narrative tried to include the Moldovans in what was called the myth of the friendship of the people. So they put Moldovans in this picture, and they put some partisans, ethnic Romanians, that fought as a proof for that. Basically, it is true that there were a lot of, probably not the majority, but probably the 30%, 40% even, of the partisan groups were created by, or the members were ethnic Romanians, but it came only very lately in 1945, and this is more kind of the pattern of the partisan movement in other parts of Europe, in Romania including in general. In other countries. So basically, when the sides changed and when the Red Army came or was very close, the people understood, and probably this was not, let's say, could not be interpreted as support for the communism as ideology, but they understood that the Germans would lose the war, so they tried to help bring this day closer. So basically, this is a myth that Moldovans fought. So it's only partially justified. So it was a part of politics of integrating the Moldovans, but basically Bessarabia was a part of, as I told you, of Romania in the interwar, and as Romania was an ally of Germany. Ethnic Romanians, basically, and other ethnic groups, except the Jews, did not have, let's say, motives to fight against the regime, because some of them, or majority of them, felt their regime, their country, and that's why you don't have this mass partisan movement or insurgents against the Romanians and Germans. So this is a complicated story in this regard.
How do the patterns look like today? Who is friend, who is enemy?
In comparison with other countries, with the Baltics especially, we have, and I would say we are proud of that, we put on the same legal basis the both parties that participated in the war. So the approach that won in the public debate in mid 1990s was that the war was a tragedy for both parts, for the simple ordinary soldiers. So from 1995, the veterans of the Romanian army, the legal basis are recognized as the veterans of the Soviet army. We don't have, in comparison with the Baltic states, we don't have the Soviet partisans or Red Army officers, something like that, sued for fighting against the majority nation, let's say. We have a different approach in Transnistria, a breakaway territory, but we don't control it. There is a Russian army there, and there the narrative is more kind of Soviet, more Russian. We are victorious, we are the victors. So this kind of very Manichean story of the Russian Federation is continuing, the Soviet myth of interpretation of the war. So there you have a more kind of ethnicized version. Sometimes they are saying multinational, Приднестровский народ and так далее. But basically this is around the Russian people as the primus inter pares and the avant-garde and looking at other nationalities, let's say, actually this is a contradiction. In the official discourse you have as the Soviet one integrating others around the Russians, but basically at the popular level you have a kind of disdain, and tending to. And I will give an example. Actually, in the 60s, those who tried to speak publicly during the meetings in Romanian, called at that time Moldovan, they were blamed as being the heirs of the fascist Antonescu regime during the war. So they were not recognizing the Russian language. So here, what I would like to add is that the war actually helped legitimize the Soviets in their, let's say, trying to impose the Russian language as a basic language of instruction and in public discussions, based on the role of the Russians in the war. So we are liberators, so we are entitled to, let's say, to order the music, how to say, and Moldovans should learn Russian because of Lenin. Я выучил русский только за то, что Ленин разговаривал. And the second, let's say, argument was that we are the leading nation in the Second World War, which brought you liberation, not only to you, but to whole Europe, including to the Germans, liberation from the Nazi regime.
The crisis in the Ukraine is still enduring. Moldova is also an ex-Soviet republic. There are some areas where, as you said, a lot of Russians leave. What are the fears in Moldova right now?
Yeah, of course, Ukraine is our neighbor, and we are watching very closely what is happening there. Of course, but basically, I would say there is a enthusiasm, but actually, the public opinion is divided, probably 50-50. No matter the ethnic allegiance, including the ethnic Romanians, are divided. First of all, probably because we still have the Russian media, Moscow-based media, dominant in the area, of course, and this is having impact on the public opinion. At the same time, probably there are some reserves in terms of being 100% on the Ukrainian side, let's say, and probably because some territories of historical Bessarabia are part of Ukraine now, and the Romanian minority, they are not, let's say, so good treated, to put it mildly. And another factor here is that we don't forget, or the public opinion, great part of public opinion doesn't forget the role the Ukrainians had in the Transnistrian war in 1992, when the Ukrainians, not only the extreme right, but also the other parts of Ukrainians participated or enthusiastic and were on the Russian side against Moldovans. So here we have problems of this way. But basically, as a community, as a state, of course, we are on the Ukrainian side, because otherwise we could be the next country to be, experimented this hybrid war.
Probably the last and very short question: in which direction is Moldavia looking? To the west or to the east? To Russia or the European Union?
Now the public opinion, according to the last opinion polls, is divided almost on the edge, 50-50. And this situation is also reflected in the parliament. In the last 3 or 4 elections we had in the last 6 years, only from 2009, when the communists were ousted from the power. We started very well. We were coined as the success story of the European partnership, and so on and so on and so on. Till recently, when we acknowledged that the pro-European parties actually are more corrupted than the communist in power, the Voronin regime from 2001-2009. So here we are in a very big deadlock. But what is interesting, the opinion polls are showing that not in, let's say, classical countries, in France or in other countries, when you have people disappointed in one party, in the left, for instance, they are voting for the right, and vice versa. In Moldova, the opinion polls are showing that the pro-European parties in power now are having less than 15% or 20%, not more. At the same time, you don't have these votes automatically going to the right, to the left, or extreme left. They are still pro-European in the public opinion, the respondents of these opinion polls, and they are looking for new leaders to continue the what we call bombastically European integration, which means getting closer to European Union, and who knows, one day becoming a member, but this is a long way.